Spider-Man 2, the sequel to Spider-Man from 2002. This film was released in 2004, once again directed by Sam Raimi, and stars Tobey Maguire as the lead character. We have a new addition to the film, Alfred Molina. He plays Dr. Otto Octavius, also known as Dr. Octopus. This film right now, after watching this film is awesome. So far, it is the best film out of the trilogy. Right now, the best film out of the franchise. This film has a lot more character development surrounding Peter Parker. And also, we get a lot more action in this film. It's basically the story is about Peter responsibility. It's about Peter balancing the responsibilities as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. And he thinks that that balancing both responsibilities is easy. But it's not quite that easy at all. It's actually very difficult. With great power comes great responsibility. That is the theme that is learned in this film. So, in the film, we see Peter Parker. He misuses that responsibility. He's late to his job as a pizza delivery man. He gets fired. He's late to his classes, doesn't do his homework. He's late to Mary Jane's play. He fails to pay his rent. Every time he is not responsible for these situations, he loses his powers. He has to try to find out what went wrong. So in the film, he starts going to Mary Jane's plays. He starts doing his homework. Then he goes and sees a doctor and tries to get himself figured out. He saves a kid from a burning building. And one of the most emotional moments of them all, he tells Aunt May that he is responsible for Uncle Ben's murder. Peter tells Aunt May that he could have been there to stop the killer, but he couldn't. He told Ben to drop him off at the library. Peter didn't go to the library. He went somewhere where he can make a bunch of money. And it's kind of his fault that Uncle Ben got killed. Aunt May forgives him, and she is glad that he told the truth. That's kind of what got Peter Parker back on the right side of the fence. So he gave up Spider-Man for a while. But we all know that Spider-Man is never going to go away. Because we have a great villain in this movie. And Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus. He is a scientist who is doing a science experiment. This experiment is he is trying to sustain fusion. Peter warns him that the experiment could go wrong. Octavius, just like Norman Osborn, ignored the warning signs, and the experiment went wrong. So the inhibited chip that controlled the arms was damaged. Now the arms can control him. And he provided a great challenge to Spider-Man. While Green Goblin did a lot of psychological challenges, Octavius was very physical. There's a scene in the bank where Octopus tries to rob the bank. Spider-Man has to try to stop him. He kidnaps Aunt May. Spider-Man has to go rescue her. There's a train scene where Dr. Octopus derails the train, and Spider-Man has to use his powers to prevent him from going over the railroad tracks. It's a pretty iconic scene. Spider-Man Homecoming tried to redo that scene. Just wasn't really as effective as the one in Spider-Man 2. There's a scene at a restaurant where Peter Parker saves Mary Jane from a car being thrown into the window. And you get to see the ending scene, another fight scene between Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus. We get to see Spider-Man rescue Mary Jane. Mary Jane is held captive. So most of all, I like this movie. I love it. 10 out of 10. But my only issues here is their relationship. the relationship issues is what I don't like. And the relationship between Peter Parker and Mary Jane is not defined. Peter wants to date Mary Jane. That's obvious. Mary Jane doesn't know if she wants to date Peter. Back in this movie, she goes and dates J. Jonah Jameson's son, John Jameson, who's an astronaut. And a football player, of course. And she treats Peter Parker as a friend. But the way they kind of talk to one another and react to one another seems like they're in a relationship. And eventually at the end of the movie, we see that they do and become boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, the relationship in this movie I can tolerate. It's not an annoyance. It will be in the third one, which we will discuss in that one. Another part of this movie I didn't like was Harry Osborn. I do not like James Franco as Harry Osborn in this film. The first film he was alright. This film, not so much. At the end of the first film, Green Goblin kills himself with his own glider. And Spider-Man drops him off at his house. And Harry is there and confronts Spider-Man. And so from that point on, Harry Osborn kind of figures out that maybe Spider-Man killed the Green Goblin. We even see a scene here where Dr. Octopus, he kidnaps Spider-Man, brings him to Harry Osborn. Harry Osborn reveals that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Now he's like, oh my God, you're Peter Parker. That means you killed my father. But what I don't get is the assumption of where Harry thinks that Peter Parker or Spider-Man killed his father. I don't get it. You think that the NYPD would have told him what his father's cause of death was. Or even better, the butler. He has a butler in this movie who has only one line. He just basically said that, you know, Harry, your father only obsessed over his work. And Harry Osborn just ignored him. I would too, because the butler is not really that good. He only has one line. You think that the butler would tell him how his father died. He does in the third one, but we'll get there. So, the relationship between Peter and Mary Jane, don't like that. Don't like Harry Osborn, but those issues don't really take away from the performance of Spider-Man 2. They're not an annoyance. That they will be in the third one. The MVPs of this film, there are a couple. One is Alfred Molina, plays Dr. Octopus. He saved the movie for me. Without his performance as Otto Octavius, I don't think this movie would have been successful as it was. Another MVP is Danny Elfman. I forgot to mention him in the first film. He was the one that composed the Spider-Man opening credits intro theme. And that theme is awesome. It fits Spider-Man. I always get energetic and excited when I hear it. It's just awesome. Wish they would use that theme for the later Spider-Man films, but that just didn't happen. So this has been your Spider-Man 2 review. 10 out of 10. It's one of the best films in the early 2000s. Is it better than the first one? I'll say yes. We got more development, more action. Now the question is, can Spider-Man 3 live up to Spider-Man 2?